white identitarianism create some type of, I gotta say it, guys, civil war.
I also think a lot of people, especially white Christians, they're resisting identity politics. They don't want to go to that next step, but that's where it's heading. I mean, it's going there quickly. I mean, white identitarianism is going to happen, and they want it to happen.
Well, they're creating it, and I speak for myself as someone who's 54 and grew up in a totally different country. I don't want to identify as white. I don't even like thinking about that stuff. I like thinking about how people really are. I don't like thinking of them as members of groups.
Yep.
And they're pushing it. They're like, everyone has an identity. Everyone's a member of an identity group except the majority, who are despised, and we're trying to make them into the minority, but you're not allowed to organize as a specific as your identity. And it's like they're not only encouraging it, they're guaranteeing its emergence.
And so you guys just saw that very little bit to start things off with, and you're probably thinking to yourself, we're going to be talking a lot about Tim Pool and his favorite topic when he's not getting any views, and that, of course, is civil war. Now, here's the thing, guys. I've talked about this a few times before, and I've said pretty much the same thing every time. And of course, I'm going to stick with this. However, this right here does add a little wrinkle, but it's a wrinkle that, quite frankly, I probably expected, but never really discussed. However, the thing is this here. I am also saying this and doing this video with the backdrop of a former president who's running for president again, getting removed from a certain state's ballot, the state of Colorado, via the 14th Amendment after a lower court or a lower court judge actually rejected this effort in that state earlier this year. Now, guys, I'm going to be leaving this Twitter thread in the description box from Maximus. I'm also going to be leaving this little bit from Steven Crowder. A lot of people have actually broken this thing down, and of course, it looks like this entire thing is probably going to get rejected once again. Sticks, Hexenhammer has been accurate on this. Robert Barnes has also talked about this. You're not going to be able to use the 14th Amendment to remove someone from the ballot. It was actually developed for the Confederacy. But it's also very funny, especially seeing how it is that the Biden administration and the wokes, of course, are getting rid of the Confederate Reconciliation Monument in Arlington National Cemetery. Very symbolic of the nature of exactly where they're going at here. It's almost like they're trying to tell us that they do, in fact, want to inflame the situation and make it a lot worse. They even use these words like Christian nationalism and stuff like that. And, of course, my computer just popped on. But then again, at the same time, you guys can laugh at that if you want. But still, the thing is this here. The whole topic of white identitarianism is coming from, well, this entire little thing that we got to discuss now. I'm going to roll you guys a bit of a montage. I rolled it in a video earlier today.
In a few years, we're going to be a majority brown country. White people will not be the majority in the country anymore.
This will be the first generation ever in American history in which whites will be a minority of the generation at some point.
As of 2007, every year, babies being born in this country, whites now are the minority.
In 2044, everyone is going to be a minority.
As the demographics change, as white people become the minority in the country, which is coming.
Demographics is destiny.
Demographics is destiny.
Demographics is destiny, right? The country is changing.
I've been saying it here. Other people have been saying it here for years now, even before Donald Trump. The demographics is destiny.
The white population is declining for the first time in history in America, while the number of multiracial Americans
be announcing that we're calling the 38 electoral votes of Texas for the Democratic nominee for president. It's changing. It's going to become a purple state and then a blue state because of the demographics, because of the population growth.
The growth in Texas has been almost entirely driven by non-white population growth, mostly by Hispanic and Latino population growth.
The idea that whites will not be the majority, I mean, it's an exciting transformation of the country. It's an exciting evolution and progress of our country in many different ways.
The white population is declining. It was always on the upswing. So that speaks to the beautiful diversity of America. It speaks to how that population the demographics will weigh in politically.
I believe anybody who echoes a replacement is to blame, not for this particular crime, but it's for no purpose except profit and or political benefit.
That's right, GRT, the acronym of GRT and the demographic change. Now, guys, I have spoken at length about the immigration ordeal that's going on, especially with people being sent to Chicago, people being sent to New York. And I did just briefly brush over the Trump situation. And of course, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, I guess the situation may be right for it. Of course, we're also about to go into a much, much worse economy than what we're dealing with now. So you probably think that it's going to happen. However, as I have said on several occasions, what more than likely would occur is that it would happen in the bluest of cities. More than likely, it would be in cities on the coast, probably New York, Boston, maybe Chicago, which is technically on a piece of water, the Great Lakes, but it's not on the actual coast. San Francisco, Oregon, LA, Seattle, those right there would be the cities that would be more inclined to actually go through something like this, probably Philadelphia as well. Mostly due to the fact that these places are some of the bluest cities in the country, may be the actually bluest cities in the country by actual vote itself. However, when you get to the whole topic of identity politics, which of course I'll be touching on again briefly in my video on Ramaswamy because he's called this out, that video will be out tomorrow to go along with this one, you will see that identity politics is actually the key driving factor in this entire situation. It's what the left is actually running on. So how do you pander to your base? Well, you take down some Confederate statues or you order some Confederate statues being pulled down. Of course, the Reconciliation Monument being pulled down at Arlington National Cemetery is almost like they're trying to say that we really and truly don't care about the people who lived or inhabit the areas of which, by the way, these Confederates actually came from. Civil War is a different topic altogether, but still at the same time, it's almost as if to say they are trying to, how do I say this? It's like they're trying to divide the nation much, much further. They say that it's moving on, but of course it's not, because the best way to move on is actually to remember your past and don't make the same mistake going forward. When you start pulling down things from your past, you then start to repeat the mistakes of your past. Now, real quick, before I really dive into this, I want you to know this right now. One video I forgot to mention about the situation involving the 14th Amendment was Greg Foreman's video. He did a very good job of looking at everything that CNN and, of course, MSNBC was saying, because they brought legal personnel up there who all said the exact same thing. This attempt on Trump, or this attempt to remove him from the ballot, would ultimately backfire. And something else, too. If you really and truly wanted to make it impactful, maybe it should have been a battleground state that you did it and not Colorado. Which then brings me to this little segment here.
Laura and the Senate writing this bill along with the governor, and we believe we have a bill that will survive any type of Supreme Court challenge, because we are being invaded. Arizona tried this about 10 years ago, but our law is different. It simply says that our law enforcement can arrest anyone, take them in, do a background check, photograph, do fingerprints. If they saw them cross the border illegally, we can do that. Or if they happen to reveal in the arrest stop that they crossed illegally, and then the magistrate will send them back and will escort them to the border. And they have a choice. They can go to jail or they can go back. And if they go back and try to come back again and we arrest them again, the penalty gets even higher. We're fed up. In fact, seeing what happened in Colorado tonight, Laura, it makes me think, except we believe in democracy in Texas, maybe we should take Joe Biden off the ballot in Texas for allowing 8 million people to cross the border since he's been president, disrupting our state far more than anything anyone else has done in recent history.
Now, the reason why I played that was so that way you guys could know. First of all, Donald Trump hasn't even really been charged with anything. He really hasn't been. The thing is this right here, though. The Supreme Court knows that the country is under some form of invasion. There's actually been lawsuits filed. It's possible that Texas could do that, not to mention the fact that they actually have a line to the Supreme Court, an actual direct line to the Supreme Court itself. So it'll be very, very interesting to see, but I may do a video on that at a later date. Either way, though, the situation's going to be overturned when it gets to the Supreme Court. With that being said, and now let's get back to the whole white identitarian question. And of course, Tim always loves to use the phrase Civil War. It comes up at least once a week on a show, at least on the IRL podcast, the IRL, whatever you might want to call it. I don't even know if you even want to call it a podcast. I just refer to it as a podcast because it's normally on roughly 2 hours a night. So therefore, it kind of acts as if to say it's a podcast or a show. But still, at the same time, we have to look at this and we have to ask ourselves a question. What does white identitarianism have to do with this? Well, let's go ahead and dig into this. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get a look at the situation now. Ashley St. Clair, she posted a video this past week. She posted it on Monday. Of course, Tim even reacted to it, even did a video on it, of migrants being basically given, let's just say, top treatment, first class flights. Of course, we've been talking about this with the hotels, the $7,000 a month. Let me just go ahead and kind of throw this out here so that way you guys can see where we're going.
The Phoenix airport right now, I'm waiting to board my flight to New York, to JFK, and it looks like we have a whole lot of migrants who are also boarding this flight that the U.S. taxpayers are paying for. This is what the U.S. taxpayers are paying for right here. Premium seats on Delta that they have people coming here. We're paying for this, shipping them out to New York City because guess what? Everywhere else is at capacity. So they have these sanctuary cities like New York that they're now shipping these migrants to that we're all paying.
And of course, not only are the taxpayers paying for this, but this entire thing is in fact backfiring on the Democrats, especially those who were in the blue cities. This right here happened a couple of days ago in Chicago, and I did a video on it and released it earlier today. You guys know me, I do these videos and then release them the following day. But I did in fact release this video here, which will be in the description box, this video here, where now the migrants are beginning to get sick, and a kid did in fact die from one of those sicknesses.
Throughout the city of Chicago, we provide on-site medical care.
That's not what we're hearing from many of those who live here, however. Several migrants saying today illness is rampant among the children, with very little, if any, medical care being given. Most don't want to show their faces for fear of retaliation. There is a chickenpox outbreak, says this 28-year-old mother of two. There's a flu outbreak. Children have scabies. There are bed bugs. Anything you can imagine is in that shelter. A few days ago, my daughter had a fever, says this 22-year-old mother. I was told I had to wait for an appointment. They got 3 appointments.
Now, guys, I've talked about this in several of my immigration videos, how it is that the weather is going to play a very, very big role in what happens, that we're looking at a possible humanitarian crisis because a lot of these migrants came post July 21st. And, of course, they're not receiving any benefits or anything like that. And I've been very, very consistent in saying that these people, quite frankly, should not be here. It's not just the fact that it was illegal and that they are illegal themselves, but it's also the fact that they're getting benefits that others who live in these cities think they should be getting. Primarily, it's minority groups, and, of course, blacks and Hispanics tend to be not natural friends. They typically tend to be natural enemies, and this entire situation is backfiring, and, of course, it's going to continue to backfire. So, what I'm basically trying to say is that it would not be a CW when it comes to red and blue. It would be a CW, of course, in the sense that it would be blue on blue. Remember, the vast majority of these minority voters who do live in these cities are all Democrat voters. Some of them range from socially conservative to liberal when it comes, to be somewhat socially conservative, but to be economically liberal, meaning that they probably live on some form of a handout, which, by the way, also brings another question, too, to the libs. You need to ask them point blank. Do you want excessive amounts of handouts? Because you can't have excessive amounts of handouts and illegals at the same time. You got to choose one or the other. Now, me personally, I think that our handout system is broken, and quite frankly, it needs to be a work requirement put in there. The exemptions, of course, would be something like, say, disability. Unemployment, you technically are under work because you're looking for a job. And of course, if you get Social Security, you're retired. And of course, if you're on the Veterans Administration or VA benefits, chances are you were in the military and there is an injury. And of course, you deserve to be compensated for this. Or if you're retired, then therefore you get your retirement. Outside of that, I think the entire system needs to be completely reformed. There needs to be a work requirement put in there. And I don't think we should be handing these things out to illegals. Which then brings us right back to what I was saying earlier about those of color. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, you talked about white identitarianism. Don't worry, I shall get to that here in a second, because obviously you think white people are the main taxpayers in the country who are obviously dealing with this. And of course, I typically don't deal with the anti-white stuff here on the channel, but I have promised that I would do so going forward because of what's happening in our schools. But the fact of the matter is this here. People who are living in these cities, minorities, are beginning to get jealous of this. They are beginning to get, let's just say they've been getting kicked to the curb is what they have. I've done several videos on this. They feel like they have been completely cheated and they are considering disengaging from the voting process altogether or possibly voting Republican in the next election. I personally think they'd be more inclined to stay home or vote third party at this point in time, but I don't think that's going to occur of them just running over Donald Trump. Maybe some, of course, mostly black males. But still, at the same time, you got to wonder if something is on its way. Which brings me back to Tim. Roughly a minute. Make sure you guys check this out.
Democratic Party wants to do this. Texas did the smartest thing they could and said, fine, we'll send them your way. We'll send them to your sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. What more could you ask for? But now they're losing their minds. Be it, Brandon Johnson or Eric Adams. Look at this from a couple days ago. Mayor Adams, migrant crisis will lead to extremely painful budget cuts. Doesn't expect feds to help. Who do you think's getting blamed? Do you think anyone is going to care? I was talking to some people in Chicago. That's where I'm from. Y'all know that. And the stories I hear are insane. The migrants that are everywhere, the police stations are full. I guess recently they started pulling migrants out of.
Now, I want to make this perfectly clear. I am in favor of immigration, but I am in favor of illegal immigration. I do believe that a wall needs to be set up. I think it needs to be double stacked. It needs to be almost impossible for you to get in. And I also think you need a wall on the northern section of the country too, because that's also another avenue where a lot of these drugs are coming in at, especially the fentanyl. China is getting them through there as well. We also found out recently that China was the true orator, but don't worry, we'll be doing a video on that in the future, asking the question where the fentanyl is really coming from. The thing is this here. If there was ever going to be a civil war in this country or some form of civil strife, it would in fact occur into the cities. It would actually be 10 times worse than what you saw during the George Floyd riots of 2020. Now, let me ask you guys a question. This is where white identitarianism really and truly comes into play. Who started those riots? You're probably going to think to yourself it was the black protesters who came out and protested on behalf of George Floyd. In reality, what happened was most of the black protesters, even BLM itself, for the most part, was actually peaceful early on. They were getting rowdy, yes. But ultimately what happened was that Antifa, who, by the way, is mostly white guys and white liberal women, they chose to inflame the situation. And next thing you know, you had a riot in Minnesota. Then you had a riot in Atlanta. People forget that there was also another cop incident where the cop was obviously in the right when you go back and look at it. Obviously, Chicago began to fall apart, and New York also was nailed with riots as well. The riots were pretty much nationwide. That right there is really and truly how a civil war would actually start in the country. It would start in the very, very bluest of cities, and they would all be warring against one another. That's actually what would happen in a civil war scenario here in the United States. I did have a video that was scheduled to be out on the Obama film, Leave the World Behind, but of course Netflix decided to copyright it. So I decided to kick that one onto the film channel that I plan on creating to do social commentary through. Fact of the matter is this here. One of the main problems that you're going to have is that you're going to have a lot of people, of course, and the whole thinking is that as long as they are replacing one minority, I really and truly don't care. But then we get to the whole GRT thing, which I kind of primed earlier. This whole topic of WRT, I have to say certain acronyms. I'm pretty sure most of you guys can probably fill in the blanks, but still the thing is this here. As long as white liberals in these areas are not affected, they typically tend not to care. They don't care if the black liberals or the black social conservatives who vote Democrat or vote with them in the area are being replaced, which is really truly how racist these people really and truly are. The white lib, they're the real problem in the country, if you ask me. But when you begin to impede on them, you get situations like you had with the Boston busing riots, which I'm showing you guys some photos of. You also get situations like in the 1968 Democratic National Convention, where you have riots, where you have white liberals fighting with Black Panthers, fighting with Hispanics, fighting with Asians, fighting with the cops. That's basically how these entire things start. It normally never comes from the right, but must 6-1. I got to say it that way once again because of the algorithm. That's how these types of things happen, and that's how these people get blamed. But then you get into the actual demographics of some of these cities. Now, guys, I am showing you some numbers of these cities. Some of these places are a little bit more white than you would think, and some of these places are not. And of course, you look at the blue states, you kind of see that they're a little bit more white than you think as well. Truth be told is the further north you go, the whiter it is. Just the way that it is. It's not that way in the South. And if you want to ask me about anti-whiteism or if anti-whiteism is going to be a problem in the South, I don't think it really does a whole lot south of the Mason-Dixon line. I mean, I live in North Carolina. I've been alive in this place my entire life. I went to school with people of color. I went to school with black people. Black people and white people typically tend to get along very, very well down here. We typically tend to work together. The same thing for the most part is in certain areas in the Midwest. It's when you start getting into the inner cities where you start to see your problems. And a lot of this racism, by the way, is completely manufactured, and the media, quite frankly, is making it 10 times worse. That's the real truth of it. But the question then becomes, would white identitarianism become an issue? It would, for the most part, only become an issue if those in cities, those whites who live in places like Boston and New York and Chicago, found themselves in the crosshairs. Which leads me to this next 2-minute segment, and of course this actual theory that Tim has on the country going forward and what the Democrats are really and truly trying to do. But this theory, while it does sound sound at first, it does have some problems. Let's roll this.
Immigrants into police stations for some reason. And I know people who are not political, they're like, what's going on, man? Brilliant play by the Republicans who said, let's show the Democrats who voted for this exactly what they voted for. No longer will we bear the brunt of Joe Biden's psychotic policy of destroying this country. And lo and behold, many people are now angry and waking up, and the mayors of these cities, they can't do nothing about it. And they'll try and blame whoever they can blame, but it's going to be on Biden. So when Donald Trump says immigration's a problem, and he says Democrats are poisoning the blood of the country, okay, I guess the argument is, how are Democrats poisoning the blood? By bringing in illegal immigrants. Therefore, Trump is saying immigrants are doing it. You still are making leaps in the interpretation. I think it's reasonable for an opinion piece to make that assessment. I think a true news piece would say Trump criticizes Democrat policy, criticizes immigration, says blood of country is being poisoned. And then you let someone read the quote and they can try and interpret it for themselves. But we don't have news organizations anymore. We have partisan, deep state run garbage. We have this tweet from Ashley St. Clair. She said, migrant placed next to me in my premium cabin still has his bag from processing center. A majority of this flight is migrants bust in from the processing center. Can Delta please let all of their customers know what medical screenings are being done for these migrants illegally crossing our border from all over the world and being flown on their flights? Not the first time we've heard something like this. They are giving illegal immigrants the golden treatment. Why? Why? Joe Biden, I believe, not just Joe Biden, but Democrats are trying to maximize chaos and destruction because they know they're going to lose. I believe they're trying to cause a massive crisis so that 2024 rolls around and they can weaponize it to their advantage.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning of the video. I brought up Donald Trump's 14th Amendment deal and how it is that Colorado removed him from the ballot. Well, he's going to be right back on the ballot right afterwards. And then Tim decides to share this tweet right here saying it would be hilarious if they just removed him altogether. Sometimes people just don't seem to understand Tim's sense of humor. Sometimes it comes off okay, and sometimes it just comes off as pretty daggone bad. They've tried 18 separate times to remove him from the ballot via the 14th Amendment. They did it in New Hampshire. They did it in Minnesota. They did it in Michigan. These attempts obviously failed. In Colorado, it was actually struck down first before it was then picked back up. Like I said, if you guys go check out the actual thread that was explained by Maximus and the clips, of course, that came in from other people who've been commenting on this, not just right-leaning outlets, because there's actually a lot of people. One of these people was Greg Foreman. He did a very, very good job of covering this as well, because CNN and MSNBC, they brought attorneys on to give their takes, and they obviously came to the conclusion that this right here would, in fact, get shot down once it got to SCOTUS. So I don't think that that's going to be the case. Well, let's say he wins the election. Will there be riots? There probably will be, but would that right there be the start of the full-blown civil war? I don't think so. You see, oftentimes when you have a nation with a lot of social alienation, and then you have somebody who, quite frankly, is not a popular president, and what I mean by not a popular president, that whether it being Joe Biden, nobody's going to want to actually vote for him. So therefore, Trump would probably have a better chance of getting over the fortifications. The more and more they indict this guy, the worse and worse it gets for them. This is one of the reasons why it is I advise you guys, please watch all those videos that I'll link in the description box and in the comment section. The fact of the matter is this right here, that probably would not do it. However, what would in fact do it is if the immigration situation possibly got so bad to where then the white liberals who live in the area or the neighborhoods, if they don't begin to start getting upset. Then we go to the question of, are the Democrats trying to destroy the nation? I think what the Democratic Party tried to do was completely erase and eradicate one particular race. I think that they did that because they realized that race would vote for them at a 95% clip regardless. Obviously, that is changing. And I think what they figured they could do was that they could bring over more people to replace certain segments, not only of the population, but also give them additional votes going forward to make Republicans basically a minority in the country. I think that that is what they really and truly tried to do in this situation, and I think it's gotten out of control and it's absolutely backfired. It could all be by actual design, which in fact it obviously was. But at some point in time, you got to cut off the tap. I think that they're doing this going up against Donald Trump's recent polling numbers. And I think they continue to let people in more and more and more and more and more. And obviously, it's beginning to backfire. And I think if there was ever a CW in this country in regards to this topic, it would probably occur more so through the immigration crisis. And I think white identitarianism could be created as a result of that. But it won't be created with red district voters. It would come with blue district voters. So yes, I have to, while there are things about this particular theory that he has I disagree with, there are some things that he did in fact get correct. If you start trying to replace people in the cities that are white, after a while, they will begin to get bugged. And of course, the pushing and the shoving will continue, or it will pick up. And then next thing you know, you've got riots, you've got chaos, you've got the cops stepping in, you've got everything you could have wanted as far as the CW was concerned. If it was by design, yes, but I don't think it was ever meant to go this far. With that right there being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and halt this video now. The second video I have planned for Thursday is going to be on the situation with Ramaswamy. I may come back and do a full video explaining the situation with Trump, too. I may move the Ramaswamy video over to Friday. I'm not sure yet. But the Christmas video is set to come out on Friday or Saturday 1. And, of course, I'm going to be seeing Napoleon tonight. I'll be giving you guys my actual thoughts on that film. So make sure you guys stick around for the rest of the week. We're going to try to put out as much content as we can until Christmas Eve. And then I'll take a few days off and come back the following week, do a few more videos. And then we'll go ahead and do the actual channel transfer into the new types of content. With that right there being said, make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.